Says it all, doesn't it? Wow, did a lot of you like that Misty trilogy. So I figured, why not keep this MLP relatability thing up for a little bit longer? Let's see how you guys like it. So, this was a very unexpected list to make, but here we are. Top 10 most relatable episodes of My Little Pony G4. Alright, so obviously before I do the list, I may as well set some ground rules. Number one, I can't just say certain scenes of an episode. It's either the entire episode or none of it. And whether or not it relates to most people largely depend on, well, the people who relate to it, though. And I'm willing to bet that there are some issues I will get wrong, so if there is, please correct me. And the other thing to note here is that I am not a mental health professional or a therapist, so if you need to see one, please see one. And if these episodes hit you quite hard and you're able to relate to them, I'm glad I could provide some new perspective. And keep in mind, believe it or not, this list can actually apply to both good and bad episodes. So any episode of the show could end up on this list. Also, no EQG. Sorry, I haven't seen enough of that show yet to really get a feel for it. I promise to in the future, though. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's finally do it and count down the top 10 most relatable episodes of MLP.
Making my way downtown, walking fast, faces pass and I'm homebound. Staring blankly ahead, just making my way through the crowd. And I need you, and I miss you, and now I wonder if I could fall into the sky. Do you think time would pass me by? 'Cause you know I'd walk 1,000 miles if I could just see you tonight.
Now, I did a lot of hard thinking going into this, and there was honestly a lot of contenders. Let that be an indication for the honorable mentions. So don't worry, if one of your favorites does not appear here, I will go into as much detail as I can there. Generally speaking, MLP FiM is a very relatable show, and I was honestly shocked I was able to narrow it down to 10. And I feel like my number 10 is going to be very hard to justify, so I am going to have to clarify. Not every episode is going to be perfect, and just because it's at a lower spot on this list doesn't mean I hate it or anything. I just mean that I like the episode better. With that being said, when push came to shove, I ultimately landed on the Hearth Swarming Club. Now, this episode is largely an anthology of multiple stories together with a central theme. So I want to focus on that first and talk more about the central theme later. So this is the only holiday entry on the list and the only Season 8 entry, as well as the only Student 6 episode on this list. The story is a bit of a whodunit after one of them is accused of sabotaging the fire of friendship, with the punishment of cleaning up the mess they left behind and staying over the break. As the six are confronted and clean up the mess, they share stories about the holidays they celebrate to the rest of the group. So, with this setup, I'm sure you can guess what the point of the episode is. The Student Six's very reason is to show how anyone from different backgrounds can get along well. It's one of the reasons why they are so intriguing as a group. They are all essentially a band of misfits in the same situation, trying to get along and make things work with each other. Their best bonds are all about relating. So to have an episode representing their specialty was definitely going to be a highlight of the season. And in this case, it shows how all of them celebrate their own holidays with their own unique traditions, bringing them together with family and celebrating with each other. With Ocellus, it's surprisingly hearth-warming Eve. Well, okay, in the way she describes it, it's clear there are some things about the holiday she doesn't understand, which is understandable. The changelings had only just recently started sharing their love for about a year. So they're just getting used to this new way of life. I would imagine it would take them a while to establish a holiday around sharing love. If you look at it that way, it actually sounds more endearing than it is cringy. With Yona, it's, I hope I get this right, Snaildar Fest. Anyways, I felt this story made the Yaks look one-dimensional. However, I tried looking deeper, and I ultimately landed on this. What strength means to the Yaks is the integrity of their character. For one, to be fair, it takes a lot to completely smash a raw log. The idea is that it's supposed to represent worthiness, as if someone is ready for something. Ultimately ending in a moss pile monument, which, if you look closely, there are 3 ribbons on it. A ribbon for each child. And that top ribbon is Yona's, hence the earning of her braids here. The ritual establishes that Yona reached top strength, so in the end, it's the pride that matters to Yona and her family. Smolder's is basically what they're doing now. No, seriously, it's about the dragons telling stories, in an event called the Feast of Fire. The dragon that tells the best story gets a feast of gems. So the story she tells is about Scales, a homeless dragon who is taken in by the Dragon Lord. The twist is that Scales took advantage of this kindness and ultimately took power for herself, leaving the previous dragon in the same position she was in. Now, obviously, once again, I had issues with this and how one-dimensional it made the dragon seem. However, a certain inspiration of mine had taken a deep dive, and I like what he found in these implications. So what I'm wondering here is, is this story the very reason why dragons are cruel in the first place? As in they don't want their kindness to be taken advantage of like the Dragon Lord was here? When the Dragon Lord is taken down so easily, it creates an environment of antitrust. However, I can take it one step further. I think some dragons would not want to be the Dragon Lord based on that. Wouldn't that create a new level to relate on? One that's more positive? And Sandbar's story is just over-the-top funny. There honestly isn't much to say about this one other than he almost lost something he loved. Though, admittedly, I don't think he's the only one in the episode who's afraid of that. Okay, I am going to take what I said here, and I am going to save it for later. You know it's good when I do that. And finally, we have Silverstream's story, the 3 Days of Freedom celebration. It's 3 days of a holiday where they each represent something, as well as providing the celebration of a closer meaning of togetherness. The first is spent in Sequestria, to represent how they hid from the Storm King. The second is spent on Mount Eris to represent their triumphant return after his defeat. And the third is a culmination of all the celebrations between the two worlds and then some, Queen Novo even gives out gifts for her people to represent her appreciation for her queendom. It's incredibly sweet. Immediately, you get the vibes of past, present, and future in this holiday, and it is just such a nice touch. Making the best of your past, embracing your present, and appreciative of your future, all neatly wrapped around a celebration of family. Eventually, it gets to a point where none of them confess, and they are now facing the serious prospect that they may not actually get home for the holidays and are going to spend it doing this. So of course they develop tunnel vision and get angry at each other, until Gallus ultimately stops the fighting. The emotional weight of the holidays crashes down on Gallus, reminding the others how lucky they are to have these holidays to spend time with their families. So he reveals his story. Not only does his holiday suck with no kindness at all, but he's an orphan with no family at all, until he met the students at the school. And so he confesses that he did it. He was the one who sabotaged the tree topper just so they could stay together a little longer. Hence his reason for wanting to stop the fight. The overwhelming guilt he felt for keeping them there just because he felt bad about going home. Now, I want to point out that Gallus isn't inherently a bad person. On some level, this is relatable. Mostly because the feeling of loneliness does some real damage. In the case of Gallus, now that he finally got to experience what it's like to not be alone, he starts understanding what loneliness can do to you long term. Remember what I said earlier? He's not the only one afraid of losing something he loves. Yep, afraid to lose his family on the holidays. And in this case, what it's like to finally have a family he never had. And the true happiness that brings. And what better way to convey that other than the holiday season? And I feel like that's why his sympathy far outweighs any malice the character had, even if his actions are not defensible. In fact, let me take this one step further.
Wait, hold on. Cousins? What are those?
Your aunts and uncles' children? You know, part of your family.
Just about smashing stuff, like all your other holidays.
No! How Griffin get that idea? This holiday about so much more. Last year, for example, most perfect Sniltar ever.
Well, we do have the Feast of Fire. Every dragon gets together and tells stories. The best one wins a pile of gemstones.
You see, I feel like the secret genius layer to all of this is the behaviors that the Six describe in their stories. They unknowingly inspire Gallus traits he may need to learn from to tell the truth, and especially going forward. So they indirectly inspired him to embrace the feelings of the holidays, which he tries to inspire back to his friends directly. And guess what they do? They decided to stay with Gallus for the holidays and celebrate together. So that begs the question, why? Well, like I said, his friends gave him feelings of inclusion and togetherness, and then he tried giving it back when they were fighting. Definitely in tune with the holiday theme, to be sure. But I think it's from something else far more positive. You know that saying, there's no tradition like a new tradition? Well, yeah, the students must have thought this. Hey, we're all going back to our families to celebrate the same traditions we always have. But we're going to take away Gallus's family for the holidays if we do. And they obviously don't want to do that, so they figured, you know what? Let's make the best of this. Let's make a new tradition, a new holiday with each other, and let's make it count. Let's give this new holiday to each other. You see what I mean? Even when they've had something taken away, they still try giving despite it. And this almost certainly changed Gallus, because guess what happens in the off-season holiday special? He just gets on the train and leaves. He is happy to know that he will never truly be alone. If all of that is not relatable, I don't know what is. Although, one other thing I will admit is that the punishment of having your entire winter break taken away from you is quite harsh. But to be honest, I more blame Twilight for this. For one, I know she could have just had them stay to clean the mess and let that be it.
But you're right, Aloysius. I have to tell. And once I do, I can forget Rarity thinking of me as her most supportive friend. I can forget Rarity thinking of me as a friend at all.
And that pretty much sums up the whole episode and its relatability. Fear of losing your value in the eyes of your friend, but not wanting to lose your own value either. Honestly, I always felt like Spike's character was better written than he was given credit for. He's such a dedicated friend to the main six. He does so much outside of his comfort zone, doing so many ridiculous things just because he's so passionate about helping others and being the best assistant he can be. But it's also because he seeks the social approval and inclusion. He has expectations he wants to live up to, especially when the main six outright say it like Rarity does here, calling him her favorite dragon and later most supportive friend. It gives Spike feelings of validation, and so he pursues that title, wanting to live up to it for Rarity. This actually reminds me a bit of Spike at Your Service because of how Spike desperately wanted to live up to his code for Applejack, and how the main six didn't want him to lose himself in that code along the way. And yes, I actually like Spike at Your Service now. I think it aged better. However, I will at least say Inspiration Manifestation is better written, as Spike doesn't feel like he owes Rarity anything. So his desire to help her feels more organic. The story is Rarity tries contributing to this festival by making a puppet theater which she fails at. Spike tries to console her and lift her spirits back up, but he only does it for so long before he finds something to help her instead. Afterwards, Rarity loses herself in a blind passion that's borderline destructive. So Spike needs to admit the truth to her before it's too late, but he's afraid he'll lose her as a friend. First, how this episode starts is that Spike knows his limits when it comes to consoling Rarity. So instead of staying there and failing, he decides to find something to help her directly. And it works. For now. So it's rewarding at the end when he sees those limits again. Second of all, I love how the ending is executed. In The Truth Will Set You Free, not only sets Rarity free, but Spike too. And in the end, both friends were to blame for the toxic behavior. Whether Rarity is under a spell is irrelevant. It's a metaphor for perpetuating toxicity. That's probably why her eyes and magic are green.
What matters is what you think, Spike, and you love it. Don't you?
And here's the beautiful thing. The episode ends appropriately by having Spike and Rarity remain friends because now they can relate to something new. They both had a truth they needed to face, and they somehow helped each other see it. Which is just amazing. It shows all too well that happy endings are appropriate when done right. If you're watching this, you, the audience, you have seen this scenario with a friend before. By the way, I think there's another message here that the episode sends. Spike's crush on Rarity. I have a bit of a confession to make. The Spike-Rarity ship didn't bother me. I didn't really care about it. I just found it unnecessary and lazy. Mostly because it was a joke. That's where it largely began and ended. Which, yes, I do feel like at one point it truly did end. It's hard to argue that Spike's crush on Rarity was not less and less noticeable as it was in later seasons. And yes, I think this is the episode where his crush ended. Think about it. For about 4 seasons, Spike's crush was very one-sided, all while he tries to live up to what he wants to be for Rarity for her romance. But by this episode, Spike is perfectly content with just being her most supportive friend. It's what he's most afraid to lose. So by the end of the episode, all that fear Spike had about losing Rarity is just gone. He's relieved and overjoyed that he and Rarity stay friends, that have a closer, stronger meaning now. And being friends is all that matters to Spike in this now, implying that Rarity's romance is no longer something he values, meaning finally, he listens and does something for himself. And he doesn't confess or says anything about it to Rarity. He just figures it out on his own. And over time, his romantic behavior slows down until it finally stops. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that is smart writing. You knew it. You knew, some way, somehow, that this episode just had to make the list. So, usually when I make these lists, my number 8 spot is usually my hardest choice. And I knew that a fan-favorite episode had to make it, I just didn't expect it too soon. And whenever I say MLP can have a universal appeal, it's usually episodes like this that prove my point. But let's be honest, pretty much every brony I've ever talked to, every person with pony history, every single one of them usually have nothing but good things to say about Read It and Weep. Because, well, let's describe it, shall we? You didn't think much of MLP when you first heard of it. It's just a show of child's play that can't really make a difference. Surely it's nothing special, it's just a show, right? Wrong! One night out of curiosity, you bite the bullet and watch the pilot. Then you watch 3, then 4, then 5, and before you know it, the show officially got you. You cannot deny it. You love MLP. This show is so much better than what you expected. Suddenly you have a new sense of escapism on your hands. There's just one problem. You're an adult and you're a guy. And this show is meant for little girls.
You steaks went goily, huh?
So you're panicking and worried that your friends and family won't accept you for your new fascination. So you keep this your little secret in the closet. Every night you come home from school or work or whatever, you always come back to watch MLP, and it's become more than an escape for you. It's become a comforting relief from the daily stress of life. It's got such a pleasant atmosphere, and it's very motivating. You connect with the characters on a more personal level that inspire you. In general, things become better and things are more positive in general. Soon, you've finished Season 1, and you're halfway through Season 2 until you finally come across this. It's about Rainbow Dash in the hospital, with her only entertainment being something she doesn't like, a book that she immediately looks down upon and misjudges, until she finally caves and tries it. Immediately she finds something to relate to, kinda like you are now. The idea of this episode dawns on you, and it hits you very hard. Suddenly, Rainbow's flat, hostile tone about the book softens as she becomes genuinely invested in this daunting adventure of this in-universe Indiana Jones known as Daring Do. Rainbow's tone suddenly reaches excitement as she more than loves her jungle temple quest to find the mythic sapphire statue. In a snap, Rainbow finally admits to herself,
I hate to admit it to myself, and would really hate to admit it to my friends, but I love this story! I love reading! I'm an egghead.
You stop the episode trying to process this next level of relatability, as all that lingers in your mind is the old saying, sound familiar? Once you get over that, you continue, though you might have to pause a few times. The actual Daring Do story is genuinely interesting itself, but the episode remembers to switch back to reality. And as Rainbow's friends visit her, she starts doing things that you would do verbatim, just to return to your escape. And even absent-mindedly mentioning the new passion without context.
Who said anything about Daring Do? I told you I'm not interested in reading.
So that when the time comes, it may seem more bearable. As the episode nears its end, Rainbow embarks on a daring adventure of her own, as she breaks into the hospital to get the book again, resulting in a chase scene that ends with the ultimate confrontation. Rainbow begins to reveal before Twilight does it for her, and as Rainbow explains why she likes the book, all her friends surround her, relieved that her supposed fracas was just because she found a new passion. The implication is obvious. They all accept her for her new interest. It's all very subtle, but it's clear they're proud of her for admitting this and accepting this of herself. So you know things are going to be okay. And the episode ends with the classic message of, don't knock it till I try it. You decide that this is it. It is finally time to confess to your friends and family the truth, as you finally admit to yourself that you are in fact proud to be a brony. Well, okay, this may not exactly be how your story went, and it's not exactly how mine went either. I actually looked up the term brony without fully knowing what it meant. And yes, it was a very I'm not the only one kind of moment for me. Honestly, though, that story right there is probably my whole reason why I relate to Read It and Weep. Everything I like in that episode is pretty much in that little tale I told. The relatability gives visibility, and so it makes you feel heard. In fact, the episode may have even encouraged someone to finally reveal their passion to someone else. And when you get into broader definitions, just revealing what you like to your friends, the visibility just gets a whole lot more. So yeah, MLP is not just for little girls. And it's not just for bronies either. It is for everyone. Really, the only reason why this episode isn't higher is because, well, as relatable as it is, I think it's actually a lot easier to overcome now. Not to say that this still isn't difficult, but this episode came out in 2012. The 2010s is a time when I feel like the culture around stereotypes and stigmas truly started to change. And the brony fandom almost certainly emerged as a key player. Nothing like it has truly happened since. Nowadays, whenever someone insults you for being passionate about these things, the insulter is usually the one who's seen as the out-of-touch one. But all things considered, it's a great episode. Almost everyone seems to love. Brony or not, whoever I talk to loves the message it sends, and I cannot overstate how happy that makes me. You know why? It's simple, because everyone relates, guys. It may be most, but it still stands. Everybody relates. I'm not going to lie. This episode was legit hard to watch. Not because it was bad. No, it's because this episode just hits that close to home. Oh yeah, we are getting into the heavy ones now, and we're not even halfway through the list. I cannot stress how much this episode hits me hard on a personal level, to the point where I really don't want to talk about it. But I guess it's a testament to how good the episode is. If anything, it's only showing me something I need to see. Oh yeah, I guess it still inspires me. It changes me, and well, yeah, it fascinates me. So the story is Twilight goes on a vacation with her family, only to find out that the trip was for the cruise ponies to meet Cadance and Twilight. So Twilight does everything for her family and fans to make them happy, but at the expense of her own happiness. So that's the premise. Although I should mention a major plot point in the episode is the character of Star Tracker, a fan who gets the chance to spend the day with Twilight and her family. If that sounds like a scam, well, it is. He was literally picked from a raffle. And don't blame Twilight for that one. Blame Iron Will, the guy who hosted it. Yeah, Iron Will, the assertiveness teacher of Fluttershy from Putting Your Hoof Down, is back and is revealed to be the one behind the princess-themed cruise. That should explain everything. And yes, I don't think it was really fair for Twilight or Star Tracker to have gotten to meet each other or know each other purely by chance. Literally, I would call both of them scammed. Although, yes, I will be talking about Star Trekker's helicopter fan approach here. But first, I have a bit of a confession to make. So another reason why this story hits me so hard is because, believe it or not, I've actually experienced both sides of this story. I've experienced a helicopter friend, actually, and have regrettably was once a helicopter fan myself. And that's a fair space to be in when it comes to this story. And as of now, I have a specific policy in place when it comes to interacting with my idols. But I still struggle with boundaries of my own, and I still struggle on what truly makes me happy, at least with friends. I haven't exactly had a fan encounter yet. And by that I mean that's exactly what Twilight goes through here. Throughout the whole episode, Twilight is literally the workaholic heavy lifter, both for her family and for her fans. And the whole time she's like, oh, they're happy, and it makes me happy. The fact that they're all happy because I'm doing this for them is just so fulfilling. I don't need to do anything for myself. This is enough. All I need to do is see some stars to make me happy. Well, okay, that may be true for Twilight, but that doesn't mean that making others happy should be the whole reason for her happiness. And as a result, she missed out on a lot of relaxation and family activities that she didn't need to. If anything, she's unaware of what doing something purely for yourself feels like, and how good that can be as equally fulfilling as well as renewing. It's a strong case of she doesn't know what's best for her yet. At least until it gets to be too much. She does all of this for the fans and misses out on activities that she wanted to spend with her family that she did want to do, but she excuses it with, well, at least they're happy. surely you can see how unhealthy that makes someone, especially when you can't see it like me. As of the production of this video, I haven't been mentally well. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail, but I'll at least say that I've suffered from a mental breakdown for an entire week. But now it's not as bad. I'm sure you guys would want me to do something for myself now, just so I didn't feel so numb, and so I can finally open up again. That's why I'm going to HarmonyCon. I've always been wanting to go. I don't know how I'm going to end up, but I want to try. And trust me when I say I'm okay, or if anything, I'm going to be okay. So yeah, Twily and Twily going through the same concept with different situations. But to be fair, I think it's as big a problem for Star Tracker too. I know that sounds stupid, but I feel like I can relate to this guy as much as I can with Twilight. Despite the fact that Star Tracker barely says anything in the episode, I think his actions still say a lot, specifically with how starstruck he is with Twilight. It means he's just as blinded for doing things for himself, too. He spends the entire episode right by Twilight's side, and I get the point. He's meant to represent the annoyance of helicopter fans. That doesn't mean you're not supposed to sympathize with him. I mean, Twilight and her family didn't think he wasn't worth sympathizing with. And yeah, let's make that clear. Twilight's lash out was something she regretted for a reason. Instead of thinking her lash out was justifiable by saying she was stalked all day, she doesn't make an excuse, and she acknowledges that it was irrational behavior that she doesn't stand by, and it wouldn't be right. She literally could have said anything else politely like she usually would. Which is almost certainly why she apologized to Star Trek. Okay, listen, I know this seems unwarranted or unnecessary, but I think it was, because there's another layer to Star Trekker's character that I want to take into account here. In the episode, he's meant to symbolize the problem. Well, yeah, he is. And I think Twilight knew this too. When Twilight saw her error, she ended up seeing the error in herself by accidentally hurting him. So in a weird metaphorical way, Star Tracker inadvertently helped her see the problem. And so did Cadence, obviously, when she made it clear to Twilight that what ponies expect of her is more than she as a person can give. And even more so how she emphasized the need to draw the line. Still, I feel like Twilight's treatment of Star Tracker at the end was fair and even better for Twilight's inclusion of him. It ended up helping Star Tracker see his problem too, and so he actually learned his lesson, and tries knowing Twilight's person a bit more within obvious reason and that ends with the two standing up for each other against Iron Will. It's incredibly sweet. And another testament to how you can write a happy ending realistically. It seriously makes me wonder what happened to Star Tracker after he got home. Let's hope he and Twilight stayed in contact. I have another confession. I have a personal bias towards outcast stories, which is why I feel The Times They Are a Changeling warranted my 6th spot. But I mean, yeah, it's my list. Of course I'm going to be biased towards these episodes. Now, let me further this context. Yes, I was an outcast. But my quote-unquote outcast days are long since over. They are behind me, but that doesn't mean I still can't relate to outcast stories, at least in concept. I was so happy to see that they were doing something like this for the changelings, or at least for one of them. So the story is Spike finds a changeling in the Crystal Empire, but it's a friendly changeling named Thorax. So he tries to make the Crystal Empire see his true nature, and that he means no harm. So, welcome back, Spike. And well, yeah, I instantly loved how he was written here. So, in the Crystal Empire, Spike is hailed as a hero because he saved the Empire from doom. Twice. And I feel like he handles his status there very responsibly. It would have been so easy to give him an ego trip episode here, but they didn't. And I am so glad they didn't write him that way. In fact, I think he's actively afraid of getting an ego trip from this. Spike even starts the episode in disguise. If anything, Spike wants to maintain that image for the Crystal Ponies. He wants them to have someone to believe in. Probably because he knows saving the Empire twice only gets him so far in the eyes of the Empire, so he doesn't want to seem like a letdown to everyone there. I bring this up because it does come back later on. On the other end of the scale, Thorax is deemed an enemy of the Empire just because he's a changeling. Now, the changelings have always been a fascinating species to me. They literally feed on love, so that begs the question, what would it be like if they were fed genuine love for who they are? So, just the setup alone is perfect for an Outcast story. Thorax himself even says that he was in the Battle of Canterlot back in a Canterlot wedding, but he refused to fight because he admired the love that everyone showed in the battle, and so he escaped. Now, once again, we see this theme of not wanting to hurt others. But on the other side of the coin, in his mind, he doesn't see a point in love if he can't genuinely feel it and share it with others. He is actively afraid of what his kind is and what everyone thinks he is. So his reason for not approaching anyone is actually more than just his fear of getting caught. It's his fear of himself. So of course Spike relates, he even tears up. You know it's a relatable episode when even the characters can relate to each other. So Thorax disguises himself as a crystal pony named Crystal Hoof, and Spike takes him around the Empire and he actually begins to open up. At last, Thorax finally feels special and knows the true feelings of love. First of all, I love how it's not just a don't judge a book by its cover story. I mean, it is that, but it's more than that. It's sort of a redemption story as well. Even though I should reiterate, Thorax refused to fight and he left. No, the redemption comes from within. He wants to try genuinely loving others so he can be considered worthy of loving, and worthy of being his own changeling and not a symbol of fear. But yeah, how can he do that when everyone is afraid of him? It's the same case with Spike, but in reverse. He's an idol in the Crystal Empire, and he is worthy of considered being loved. But he wants to live up to that title and not really lose it. But he does. It's incredibly sad. At least for now. And you know what else is sad? Later in the episode, Thorax accidentally blows his disguise, and Spike, not wanting to let go of his title so easily, doesn't stand up for Thorax. He chickens out. So he runs out in sadness, and Spike immediately feels guilty for what he did, as he knows this wasn't the brave and glorious title that he lives up to. And then the episode goes into Spike needing to redeem himself. He eventually finds Thorax again, and he's obviously mad and accidentally knocks Spike off a cliff. And this exchange right here is one of the best moments in the entire show.
You think I would help you? I'm an evil changeling.
Because you're my friend. I just wish I had been one to you.
It's okay. I know it's hard. Everyone in the Crystal Empire loves you. I couldn't ask you to give that up for me.
He goes from telling off Spike to telling himself off. He feels so trapped that he feels the need to embrace the very thing he's afraid of. But when it came down to it, he didn't. He saved Spike again and tries understanding him, knowing that no act of evil is ever justifiable, no matter how others look at you. And after all of that, Spike, as scared as he is, goes back to the Crystal Empire to declare Thorax's innocence, knowing full well what he might lose. And this song. I was expecting the most cheesy lyrics ever, but no, these lyrics took on such a new meaning that I seriously cried the second time I listened to it. I wasn't expecting Kathy's vocal range to go as far as it did, nor did I expect this to hit so close to home. And well, to end the episode, I think there's no better way of putting it than how Twilight does it.
Spike, I'm so proud of you.
You are?
Of course! You're a celebrity here in the Crystal Empire, and you just risked all of it for a friend. I can't imagine anything more brave than that. As the Princess of Friendship, I try to set an example for all of Equestria. But today, it was Spike who taught me that a new friend can come from anywhere. I guess every pony still has things to learn about friendship, even me. And if Spike says Thorax is his friend, then he's my friend too.
This episode would have made the top 5 if it wasn't for how quick everyone was to accept this. And even then, I know why. I can hardly fault this episode, though, because of how it portrays and conveys what it means to define your own destiny as a hero or an outcast. Spike is expected to give more than he can provide, but it's not because he thinks he needs to be. It's because he knows that when he can be a friend and provide that, he can and will give it, taking inspiration from the moral of my 7th choice. And then there's Thorax. Thorax sets a precedent for the changelings for the entire rest of the series. He wants to learn about true friendship and soon take that knowledge back to his kind, proving he's no longer afraid of what his kind is, but he's confident in what they could be. When you're finally taken seriously, hiding from yourself can severely damage you. Opening up to others is absolutely vital, as they may be your only hope. And that pretty much is the episode in a nutshell, and why it works so well. So does it surprise you that this was legit even harder to watch?